Let's start with something simple. Have you ever had the feeling that, despite everything seeming right in your life, the job, the friends, the achievements, something still feels missing? Maybe you're on vacation, sitting on the beach, looking at the sea, but your mind is racing, and there's that emptiness that just won't go away. It's curious. We live in an era where we have more comfort and access to information than any previous generation. Technology promises to make everything easier. Yet, we can't seem to shake the feeling that something is out of place. Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist, noticed this over 100 years ago. He observed that as we surround ourselves with money, fame, and fleeting pleasures, something within us gets lost along the way. Modernity offers us a series of distractions, doesn't it? We're constantly busy, always connected. But what is really being disconnected? According to Jung, it's our soul, our deepest self, the part that cannot be satisfied with the superficial. And there's the point. What we're sold as success doesn't fulfill us. On the contrary, it leaves us more anxious, lonely, and confused. So what are we really searching for? Why does it often feel like, no matter how much life moves forward, something is left behind? The answer, according to Jung, lies in the need to re-establish our connection with this inner self. He believed that true fulfillment doesn't come from the outside, but from an inner journey of discovery. It's as if we're searching for the way back home, to a place where our soul finds rest, while the world outside keeps spinning. This brings us to the question, are we living a life that truly belongs to us, or are we just following the flow of external expectations and pressures? Imagine that you are a puzzle piece. At first, you're not sure where you fit. The edges may seem irregular, and you try to adjust to any place that seems to make sense. But over time, you realize there is an exact place for you. A place where you fit without effort. This process of finding your place, of understanding yourself, is what Carl Jung called individuation, the path to the true self. From the moment we are born, we are shaped by expectations. Family, school, friends, work, all contribute to the person we become. It's as if we start life following a script written by others, and often without realizing it, we spend years playing this role without questioning if it truly belongs to us. Jung believed that to become who we really are, we need to go beyond these scripts. Individuation is precisely that, a process of psychological maturity where we begin to integrate all parts of our personality, both the ones we know and those we prefer to hide. It's like exploring an old house and discovering there are rooms you've never opened. Those closed doors are what Jung called the unconscious, and inside them are fragments of who we really are, waiting to be acknowledged. But why is this important? Think of the feeling of walking through life carrying a heavy suitcase. You feel the weight, but you're not sure what's inside. It could be fear, shame, traumas, or even unexplored talents and potentials. Individuation is the process of opening that suitcase and dealing with what you find, both the good things and the difficult ones. What's most interesting is that Jung said the goal of life is not perfection, it's wholeness. In other words, it's not about eliminating our flaws or becoming an idealized version of ourselves. It's about integrating all that we are, the good and bad, the conscious and unconscious, so that we can live more authentically. And here's the main point. When we start to truly know ourselves, something changes. Life stops being just a series of external events, and we begin to find deeper meaning in every experience. The waves of life keep crashing, sometimes with force, but like a rock in the sea, we find stability by being connected to our deepest self. The question that remains is, how many parts of you are still unknown? How much of your life is lived based on who you really are? In the first half of our lives, everything seems to revolve around the external world. We study, work, aim to build a career, find a partner, and start a family. It's as if we're constantly playing a game of construction, laying foundations, raising walls, creating solid structures. This phase is essential. We need to establish ourselves in the world, face challenges, meet people, and learn. All of this forms the foundation of who we are. But Carl Jung observed something interesting. Life isn't just about following this linear path outward. At some point, usually around midlife, a quiet shift occurs. It might be a feeling of dissatisfaction, a crisis, or even a sense of emptiness. Suddenly, what used to work, what motivated you before, no longer seems enough. The career, material possessions, social achievements, all of this starts to lose some of its shine. Why? Jung said that this transition marks the point where we must shift our focus from the external to the internal. If in the first half of life our role was to build in the world, in the second half, the journey is different. Now the task is to start building within ourselves. It's no longer about accumulating, but about reflecting. It's not about doing more, but about understanding what it all means. This is where many people get lost. We live in a society that values doing, producing, and achieving. But what happens when you realize that this doing no longer fulfills you? Jung called this the midlife crisis. It's not just a cliché. It's a crucial point where many people realize they've lived a life driven by the expectations of others. And now they need to find a path that is more aligned with who they truly are. This new path requires introspection, which can be uncomfortable. We're no longer just living to the world's rhythm, we're beginning to question it. And this is an important phase, because it's here that you truly start to know yourself. It's the moment to turn inward and explore the internal territories that may have been neglected in the rush of the early years. The big question is, when this moment comes, are you prepared to turn inward? Or are you still trying to find meaning in the external world, where deep down you already know the answers aren't? Have you ever found yourself doing something just because everyone else is doing it? Not because you really wanted to, but because it seemed like the easier path. This happens more often than we realize. In fact, Carl Jung believed that this is one of the greatest challenges we face: conformity. Conformity is comfortable, following what others do, accepting society's unspoken rules, avoiding conflict. It seems easier, doesn't it? But here's the problem. By doing this, we often distance ourselves from who we truly are. We shape ourselves to fit what's expected of us, and little by little, we lose connection with what makes us unique. Jung would say we become alienated from ourselves. But being true to yourself, well, that requires courage. Courage to go against the grain, to make choices that may not please everyone, to face the loneliness that sometimes accompanies this path. It's like being in the middle of a crowd and still feeling alone. Not because there aren't people around you, but because you're disconnected from your most intimate self. The path of conformity is tempting. It offers a sense of security. But at what cost? Often, it comes at the price of our authenticity, of our freedom to be who we are. And that weighs on us. The truth is, living authentically can be a lonely road, but it's also the only path that truly belongs to us. So the question is, are we willing to pay the price for conformity? Or embrace the courage to be ourselves, even if it means walking alone for a while? Have you ever had a moment where you overreacted to something or someone? A small situation that triggered an anger or frustration that seemed disproportionate? Carl Jung believed there was an explanation for this. What we are seeing in those moments is not the other person or the situation itself. We are, in fact, confronting our own shadow. The shadow, according to Jung, is everything we avoid acknowledging within ourselves. These are traits we prefer to ignore, like impulses, fears, and repressed desires. It's not immediately visible, but over time, it accumulates in our unconscious, waiting for a moment to surface. And when it does, it can be uncomfortable. It can show up as anger, envy, judgment, but always as something we don't want to admit exists within us. Why do we avoid our shadow? Simple, because it's hard to face. No one likes to recognize their flaws, weaknesses, or the parts of themselves that don't fit the image they want to project. But ignoring the shadow doesn't make it disappear. On the contrary, it grows stronger. And what Jung discovered is that the more we deny our shadow, the more it takes over our lives, making us project our issues onto others. But here's the key point. The shadow is not just something negative. In fact, it contains a vital part of who we are. Jung said that our shadow can be a source of great power. It holds undeveloped potential, repressed talents, and often the key to our authenticity. What makes it dark is the fact that we keep it hidden. When we bring to light what we've avoided, we transform that energy into something constructive. It's like opening a box you're afraid to confront, but once opened, it reveals more about who you truly are. The shadow may contain our deepest fears, but also our gold, the parts of ourselves we haven't yet explored. So, how do we begin to integrate this part of ourselves? First, we need to observe our emotional reactions. Those situations where we find ourselves angry, defensive, or anxious. Instead of blaming the outside world, Jung suggests asking ourselves, what does this say about me? What am I projecting here? This simple shift in perspective is the beginning of integration. Integrating the shadow is not an easy process. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's certainly not comfortable. But by accepting this part of ourselves, we begin to live more fully, less reactively, and less at the mercy of emotions that control us without our understanding. And this leads to the final question. How many parts of yourself are you still denying? Have you ever caught yourself saying something like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, or it feels like something's out of place, but I can't tell what? Carl Jung believed these feelings could be the expression of two internal forces we all carry, regardless of gender, the anima and the animus. These two energies are actually polarities within us. The anima represents the feminine side of the male psyche, while the animus is the masculine side of the female psyche. But it's not simply about gender stereotypes. The anima is connected to emotions, intuition, and creativity, while the animus relates to logic, rationality, and action. What Jung realized is that we all need these two energies to feel whole. However, imbalance is common. When one of these parts is neglected, it feels like something within us is out of sync. It's like trying to walk on one leg. Movement is possible, but awkward and inefficient. Many men, for example, may grow up suppressing the anima, believing that emotions and sensitivity are weaknesses. Likewise, many women may suppress the animus, setting aside confidence and initiative, fearing they'll be perceived as too tough. But the secret lies in balance. When we allow these forces to express themselves, our lives become richer and more complete. The anima connects us to the depth of our feelings, adding color to our experiences. The animus helps us turn those feelings into action in the world. Together they create an internal dance, one that, when in harmony, helps us live more authentically and fulfilled. So the challenge Jung offers us is this. How are we handling these energies within ourselves? Are we suppressing a vital part of our psyche out of fear or social convention? By looking inward and accepting both the anima and the animus, we give ourselves the chance to be more than we thought we could be. The question that remains is, which part of yourself have you been neglecting? And how would your life change if you allowed it to emerge? Have you ever thought of someone you hadn't seen in years, and suddenly that person calls or shows up out of nowhere? Or maybe at a decisive moment, something coincides so perfectly that it seems impossible to be just luck? Carl Jung called this synchronicity, those moments when the inner and outer worlds seem to dance in perfect harmony. For Jung, these meaningful coincidences were not mere accidents. They occur when we are in tune with ourselves, when our thoughts, emotions, and the universe seem to align in an almost magical way. It's as if the world is responding to what's inside of us, creating connections that defy logic but make complete sense to the one experiencing them. These moments make us wonder, is there something deeper guiding our journey? Jung believed there is. He believed that when we are connected with our inner self, we start noticing these synchronicities more often. as subtle clues showing us that we're on the right path. So, have you ever had an experience that made you question whether coincidence really exists? In the end, the most important journey we can take isn't to some distant or exotic place. It's inward. Carl Jung reminds us that while we look outward for answers, the true path lies in understanding who we are within. It's easy to get lost in the rush of daily life, the pressures and the expectations that surround us. But at some point, we need to stop and ask, am I living the life that truly belongs to me? Introspection is that moment of pause. It's the space we create to truly listen to ourselves. It's when we begin to see the layers that make up our personality and gradually integrate those parts. And here's the point. When we truly know ourselves, life ceases to be a series of external events and becomes a richer, more meaningful experience. The question remains, have you started that journey yet? If this reflection on the inner journey inspired you in any way, don't hesitate to continue the conversation in the comments. I'd love to know, how have you been dealing with the deeper questions in your life? And if this video helped you see things differently, like and share it with someone who also needs a moment to pause and look within. Oh, and if you want to explore more about Jung and other topics related to the psyche, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. That way, you won't miss any future content. The journey continues, and I hope to see you in the next video.